previously in the Riilo Racing League. In round 1 at Catalunya, Barcelona, Keith the Hoff Denton in his white Ferrari decided he wasn't interested in that first chicane during our formation lap, so chose to ignore it altogether. Meanwhile, in pole position we had Darren Rayfield with Marcus Neal second and Darren Hunter third. Rayfield got a fantastic start from the lights, as did Darren Hunter, who chased Neal down all the way to the first corner. Sweeping into the tight right-hander at the end of the pit straight, Rayfield's got a comfortable lead ahead of Neal and Hunter, who managed to squeeze out Jamie Swan to hold on to that third position. At the end of that first lap, Swan from 4th decides to take the first of his mandatory pit stops to get himself out of the traffic. Further down the field, Keith the Hoff Denton is putting pressure on Martin Bjorkvik, who makes a slight mistake, and Hoff manages to take that position. Having established a very healthy 9-second lead at the front of the field, Darren Rayfield comes into the pits for his first stop. This leaves Marcus Neal with a chance to take over the lead, even if only temporarily. A little further back down the road, Martin Propp has a real battle on his hands trying to keep Darren Hunter at bay as they both approach Tor Arne Martinussen for 4th position. And having been overtaken by both Martin and Darren, Tor decides to try a little shortcut through the middle of a hill and a wall. So as Tor tries to cheat his way up the field, Peter Robinson's holding a very solid 8th position as Darren Rayfield, recovering from a pit stop, chases down Marcus Neal, who's still in the lead. We're now well into the second half of the race, and Rink the Ninja Visser is pressurising the prop monster, who has run wide at the chicane, and Rink takes the position. Martin looks to be struggling with traction, but he hasn't changed tyres all race, which would explain that. So Rink up to 4th and having a very solid race. Up at the front, Darren Rayfield is closing fast on Marcus Neal in the lead, but decides to do the second of his mandatory pit stops and put some fresh boots on. This promotes Jamie Swan back up into 2nd position, but I think his wife is about to start watching Netflix because there he's vanished. He's lost his connection and he is out of the race, at least temporarily. At the end of lap 22, Marcus Neal takes his 2nd pit stop whilst leading the race. This allows Darren Rayfield to come through and reclaim that 1st position. However, whilst leading the race, Darren Rayfield comes up to lap Peter Robinson, who looked like he was recovering from an off-track incident and a 2-touch, sending Peter Robinson into the wall. Darren looks like he got away with little or no damage, but decides to pit at the end of that lap anyway to take on some fresh rubber and hands the lead back to Marcus Neal. Back out in front, and with just a few laps of the race remaining, Marcus Neal takes his final pit stop, deciding not to replace tyres and just add enough fuel to see him to the checkered flag, hopefully rejoining the circuit ahead of Darren Rayfield, who in 2nd place is lapping on new tyres at about 1.5 seconds faster per lap. The strategy worked and Neal retained his lead on track. However, Darren Rayfield was closing at such a rate that on the final lap, as they approach the checkered flag, the two finish with less than a second between them for 1st and 2nd position. So the full results: Marcus Neal takes 1st, Darren Rayfield in 2nd, and Martin Propp rounding off the podium with a brilliant tactical display, having not changed tyres for the entire race. 4th place goes to Darren Hunter, followed by Rink Visser and Jamie Swan, who recovered from his disconnection. Next up, Keith Denton in 7th, Peter Robinson 8th, Tor Arne Martinussen in 9th, and Martin Bjorkvik rounding off in 10th. For round 2, we head to a very sunny Brands Hatch in Kent, and thanks to the reverse grid system, we have Martin Bjorkvik in the blue and yellow Ferrari in pole position. However, this didn't seem to be enough for Martin, who proceeded to speed in the start procedure and build himself a 50-metre lead before the race had even started, for which he would eventually be penalised. However, he takes that lead down Paddock Hill Bend and up towards Druids. From the middle of the pack, Jamie Swan made a fantastic start and has moved himself up to second position. As Martin runs wide, Jamie Swan, Rink Visser and Darren Hunter managed to squeeze through on the inside to take the position. Martin then is exposed to Marcus Neal behind, who has much better exit from the previous bend and gets the job done on the straight, leading into the two fast right-handers and chasing after Darren, Rink and Jamie. Coming into the second fast right-hander, however, boom, he gets Bjorkvik in the backside. Tor also is hit and had nowhere to go. The two of them managed to rejoin the track, but Martin, sideswipes Peter Robinson and takes himself off the circuit with significant damage. Having avoided that incident, Jamie Swan, Rink Visser and Darren Hunter continue to race off into the distance, a tight battle developing with all three cars separated by just fractions of a second. That is until Visser the Ninja decided the grass needed a bit of a trim on the outside, lost control, speed across the track, hitting the barrier on the other side, causing slight damage to the car and leaving a large gap between himself and first and second place ahead of him. A little further down the field we have Denton in fourth, Tor in fifth and a very fast chasing Darren Rayfield in sixth, who starts really applying pressure to Tor as they come down the back straight. The pressure eventually pays off as Tor runs wide in the fast right-hander, kicking up some dirt and gravel, and Darren Rayfield manages to get his man and go in hot pursuit of Keith Denton in fourth position. Following another round of pit stops, and Keith Denton finds himself in second position, being hounded by Darren Hunter in third. A battle that would rage for quite a number of laps and soon to be joined by flying Darren Rayfield. Darren Rayfield wastes no time at all, sweeping around the outside of Darren Hunter at Paddock Hill Bend and following closely Keith Denton up into Druids. Denton runs slightly wide, giving Darren Rayfield much better momentum coming down the hill, and he's able to slingshot on the inside, get the job done. That's P2 for Darren Rayfield. Meanwhile, Darren Hunter finally gets his chance to pass Keith Denton to claim P3. From the head of the race, Jamie Swan in first dives into the pit lane to serve one of his mandatory pit stops, and with a very fast approaching Darren Rayfield, the race is on for Jamie to get his stop done and get back out on track, retaining his lead. Which he managed to do, just a few corners later, and on cold tyres, Jamie runs slightly wide, leaving the door open for Darren to sneak through and take the lead of the race. There was no way Jamie was going to give that up easily though, and the two of them went door to door all the way down the following straight, but just before the right-hander, Darren manages to force a full car's length ahead of Jamie and secure that position. On lap 22, and with Jamie Swan still right behind him, Darren Rayfield from the lead decides to do the second of his three mandatory pit stops, handing the lead back to Jamie Swan. 6 laps later, and Darren Rayfield would come into the pits again to serve the final of his mandatory pit stops, only to be met by an unexpected obstacle in the form of Peter Robinson in the pit lane, going very slowly, looking around, admiring the view, and eventually parking in the pit lane for reasons unknown. This delay would allow Darren Hunter and Marcus Neal to pass Darren Rayfield into P2 and 3 respectively. And that is where they will finish, as Jamie Swan comes around the final bend to take a fantastic victory, followed by Darren Hunter in second place and Marcus Neal just hanging on to third, with a freshly tyred, very fast Darren Rayfield closing in with every lap. So the results from round 2 at Brands Hatch: Jamie Swan with another brilliant victory, followed by Darren Hunter, superb second place. Marcus Neal recovers from the early crash to claim third, with Darren Rayfield incredibly close behind, and one more lap longer and probably would have taken that position. Next up we have Keith Denton, followed by Tor Arne Martinussen, Rink the Ninja Visser, Martin Bjorkvik, Creepy Pete Peter Robinson, and Mike Bergeron. We are at the Hungaroring for round 3, and again with the reverse grid and success ballast applied, we have Mike Bergeron in pole with Peter Robinson in second in the Golf livery Audi. Mike gets a good start, but not as good as Martin Bjorkvik in the blue and yellow Ferrari, who leaps into the lead as they come down to the first right-hand hairpin. Halfway through lap 1, and Mike Bergeron still in the lead, but he runs wide at the chicane, giving Darren Hunter the perfect opportunity to attack. The two of them go door to door, Mike not giving an inch. Darren backs off to allow Mike to take the corner, but Mike will then run wide at the next bend, sweeping back across the track. Darren Hunter now under immense pressure from Darren Rayfield as the three of them come up to the right hand bend. Darren Hunter turns in, spins Mike Bergeron, which also holds up Darren Rayfield, allowing Marcus Neal up into second position. With pressure from behind, Darren Hunter in the lead takes too much curb, sending the back round, causing a collision with the barrier, leaving Marcus Neal to take first position and Darren with significant damage to his car. With Darren Hunter having to stop for repairs, Martin Prop is promoted to third and Jamie Swan up to fourth. Peter Robinson in the Audi is promoted to fifth position and finds himself under increasing pressure from new to the league racer Ricky Mack in the Lexus. At the front, Darren Rayfield continues to pressurise Marcus Neal, who's in the lead, and decides to take one of his mandatory pit stops, releasing Darren Rayfield to the front of the race. Meanwhile, in the battle for ninth position, Keith Denton and Martin Bjorkvik are nose to tail as they come into the final corner. Martin loses it on the exit of the bend, hits the inside wall, spears across, tags Keith, who thankfully gets away with just minor damage. The same could not be said for Martin Bjorkvik. On to lap 13, and we see a pivotal moment for Marcus Neal, currently running third, but here he receives his fourth and final telling off for abusing track limits and receives a drive-through penalty, which effectively takes him out of contention for the race win. Having served his drive-through penalty and another round of pit stops where Marcus Neal did not select to take on new tyres, he manages to rejoin the circuit just ahead of Darren Rayfield, but with shiny new rubber, Darren is significantly faster and really applying the pressure. It's only a matter of time before Darren regains second place behind Jamie Swan. As both drivers come round onto the main straight, they are chasing down Keith Denton to lap him just further up the road. Darren Rayfield looks to have significant drive off the bend, drifts past the Ferrari, although Marcus has the inside line and late on the brakes looks to have defended that position, but Keith comes across unsighted onto the apex, causing them both to spin, and Darren sweeps through to take the position. Back at the front of the race, Jamie Swan, the leader, sweeps into the pit stop to do his final mandatory pit stop, handing first place over to Darren Rayfield. However, just a few laps later, Darren would do his final mandatory pit stop and rejoin the circuit in second place, just a handful of seconds behind new leader Jamie Swan. Despite the pressure from Darren Rayfield, Jamie Swan would hang on for yet another brilliant victory. Darren Rayfield would come home second, with Marcus Neal rounding off the podium. In fourth place was Martin Prop, followed by Darren Hunter in fifth, and new boy Ricky Mack in sixth. Tor Arne Martinussen would be seventh, followed by Peter Robinson in eighth, Keith Denton in ninth, Martin Bjorkvik in 10th, and Mike Bergeron rounding off in 11th position. Round 4 now, and we head off to beautiful northern Italy and in the shadow of the Alps, the Monza circuit. On the front row we have Mike Bergeron and Martin Bjorkvik, followed by Keith Denton and Peter Robinson. Behind them, Tor Arne Martinussen with Ricky Mack next to him. Next up, Darren Hunter and Martin Prop, Marcus Neal, Darren Rayfield, and on the back row we have Jamie Swan and Rink Visser. And despite having pole position, Mike drops back at the green light as Martin Bjorkvik makes one of his trademark getaways. However, in the background, I think Peter Robinson must have pissed Darren Hunter off and gives him a little elbow to the ribs, sending him from one side of the track to the other, amazingly missing everybody apart from the unfortunate Jamie Swan, who spins and finds himself at the rear. Into the first chicane now, and Bjorkvik gets through cleanly, while everyone else takes the opportunity to give Mike Bergeron a little slap before going on their merry way. Satisfied now that Mike had been sufficiently beaten up, and we head off to the second chicane, and Darren Hunter puts a great move in on Martin Prop, but no, he's gone straight across at the chicane, so we'll obviously back off and give that position back. No, he's going to cheat and stay ahead of the pack. Still on lap 1 and coming into the second Lesmo, Martin Prop puts a move on Marcus Neal, who cuts across the front and the pair of them spin. Marcus Neal damaged and in the gravel. Martin Prop, I think, managed to carry on. Darren Hunter is also over on the grass. I think that's probably him realising he needed to do the right thing and give that spot back. Peter Robinson's bonnet looking a little bit second-hand. I can only assume that's from having bounced off every wall available on the pit straight. Still out in front, we have Martin Bjorkvik coming under serious pressure from Darren Rayfield, who shows him a nose coming into the second chicane. Thinks better off it, but that was enough to force Martin to run slightly wide, giving Darren much better drive on the exit, coming up into Lesmo 1. And sure enough, Darren's got the gap and sweeps round to take the lead of the race. And in the battle for 7th place, Darren Hunter passes Tor, who jinks to the right, sending Darren onto the grass and spinning out of control as Tor comes back through. Thankfully, Darren's a master at recovering from these positions without causing any unnecessary damage to the car. Oh well. While all that was going on, Bjorkvik, Bergeron and Robinson were having their own little battle as Robinson straight lines the chicane and finds himself in between Mike Bergeron and Martin Bjorkvik as they come up to the first Lesmo. On the exit, Mike runs wide, which spins the car across the track and launches him into Martin, causing significant damage to both cars, and Peter Robinson manages to escape any damage. Marcus Neal there just squeezing through, and Mike looks like he's retiring the car. Thankfully, after a long spell in the pits, Mike was able to return to the circuit, only to be hounded by a fast-charging Darren Hunter coming into the second chicane, and Mike decides just to park it on the apex, which is completely baffling to me. Only Mike will be able to explain what his thought process was there, but thankfully, no harm done. Up at the front, Darren Rayfield swings into the pit lane to serve one of his mandatory pit stops, handing the race lead over to Marcus Neal. And from P2, Rink Visser also decides to serve his mandatory pit stop, allowing Darren Rayfield to regain that position on track. Still looking for a more creative way to race around Monza, Peter Robinson decides to ignore the tarmac altogether and heads to the grass verge to carve out his own version of the racetrack. From the lead of the race, Marcus Neal swerves into pit lane to serve one of his mandatory stops and takes on some fuel, but doesn't elect to switch to newer tyres, a decision which will prove to pay dividends later in the race as Darren Rayfield screams past to reclaim the lead. Following another round of pit stops and a recovering Jamie Swan, who is also carrying 80 kilograms of success ballast, finds himself in third position behind Marcus Neal and being chased by a very determined Rink Visser in fourth place. Meanwhile, heading down towards the Parabolica, we have Ricky Mack in the Lexus running a very strong 7th position and quickly chasing Peter Robinson ahead. However, it appears Ricky was basically running on fumes and he dives into the pit lane with flames shooting from the exhaust to serve one of his mandatory pit stops and refill the tank for the rest of the race. Also turning into pit lane is our race leader Darren Rayfield, who serves the last of his 3 mandatory pit stops, promoting Marcus Neal back into first place and Jamie Swan second. However, they each have 1 pit stop remaining to serve. A little further back we find Keith the Hoff Denton out for one of his evening gentle cruises as he winds his way through the beautiful Monza circuit peacefully, blissfully, all alone in P7, it would seem. Slightly less calm is race leader Marcus Neal as he serves his final pit stop as Jamie Swan emerges from the parabolica to retake the lead of the race. Neal's objective is to rejoin the circuit in second position ahead of Darren Rayfield, knowing that Jamie Swan has 1 more mandatory pit stop to serve. Just 1 lap later and Jamie Swan does come into the pits to serve his final mandatory stop. So Marcus Neal will jump back into the lead of the race with Darren Rayfield picking up second. On the penultimate lap and whilst running on very old tyres, Rick Visser sets the fastest lap of the race whilst running 4th, holding off Martin Prop, who is in 5th position. So after 30 laps it is Marcus Neal that sees the checkered flag first to pick up his 2nd win of the season. Darren Rayfield comes home in 2nd place and the podium is rounded off by Jamie Swan. However, the action didn't stop there. To celebrate his 2nd place finish, Darren Rayfield decided to put his Audi into reverse and attempt to drive the circuit using only his rear view mirror. Sadly, the stewards didn't take particularly kindly to this and disqualified Darren from the race. Shortly after, however, the decision was made by the race director to reverse that decision and reinstate Darren Rayfield's 2nd place. So here are the race results in full. With the win we have Marcus Neal followed by Darren Rayfield in 2nd and Jamie Swan in 3rd. 4th place is Rick Visser with Martin Prop in 5th. Next up we have Darren Hunter in 6th, followed by Ricky McGough, Keith Denton and Peter Robinson. Next up Martin Bjorkvik, Mike Bergeron and finally Tor Arna Martinussen.